Hello, everyone. I am so excited to share this guest with you. Stephen LeMons works with me at Trinity River Campus, and he is an amazing speaker. When I have gone to hear him speak, I have felt motivated, so I know that the students feel motivated and inspired, but he's a nationally recognized speaker who's talked to many different audiences. So we're talking about large corporate audiences and large groups of students, but
Yes.
your motivation and the way that you bring energy to that speech is what really impresses me, Stephen. So thank you
Thank
for being
you.
here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Tricia.
Yeah, and why I have you as my first guest is my next project is really to look at what students need in order to be successful. And you
Sure.
write some really interesting things on your website, and I want to get to those. But
Absolutely.
really, I just want you to begin by telling me why you created The Journey, which is a program that you created, and how this is beginning to change the lives of students, because I see that it has that potential.
Absolutely. Well, it's really interesting. I came out of a corporate background of problem solving and troubleshooting and process improvement and things of that nature, finding root causes to problems and so forth. And having had the privilege of working here at TCC and working in the Writing Center, we started about 8 years ago to put together a magazine. And it was one of these magazines that we thought were going to be just one of these little fun kind of things. We were looking for happy articles and things like that. But the stories we got from students weren't necessarily like that. They were stories of tragedy. They were stories of overcoming at all costs and different challenges that they were facing and the odds. And when you realize this is what you're surrounded by, you realize there's an issue. There's something that they need. Having that creativity and purpose myself, there again, I start looking at the root causes and what I could do to contribute to helping them create a better quality of life. And that was the foundation of what sparked my imagination for creating the Journey workshop.
And I think a lot of people may not even realize what some of these root causes are. We know working in education and we see, people coming from all kinds of different tragedies and environments, but are there some common themes that you see with students?
Absolutely. One thing about the Journey, it's a non-traditional intervention tool. And when I say non-traditional, it's not something that you just see in the classroom or whatever, or something that, you see all across campuses. But it's an intervention tool to sort of look at these things for what they are. And when you say there are things that we see that are similarities, one, when you're looking from a community college perspective, you find a lot of students that come from backgrounds that are underserved. You find students that come from backgrounds of poverty. And when you talk about poverty, you're talking about at least 3 generations where there's no intellectual resources or financial capital or resources to pass along to those students. So the land is barren for them when it comes to going to school or trying to break into the American dream, so to say. They know they want to, but they don't have all the time the resources that are available to do that. And so that theme runs consistent throughout our campus. And when you see it, you can recognize some of the symptoms of that. And so that's why the Journey covers a lot of these root causes and ways to equip students with tools they need to move forward and achieve those dreams.
Yes, and you actually write that on your website, and I wrote that down. The American dream is not dead, but the deck is stacked and the rules have changed.
The
And
rules have definitely changed.
I say something similar to my students all the time. I tell them inspiring stories of what people have accomplished, and yet I also give them realities because I've taught in inner city schools and country schools and all across America, and I know that the deck is stacked, and I know that it's not in their favor a lot of times. But what's
Absolutely.
your perspective on that?
Well, I believe that there are many students out here that have the talent, they have the ability, and they have the desire. They just don't know how to put these things together. If all you've been exposed to is negative, you can't do this, you won't do this, your sister didn't do this, your brother didn't do this, you failed, you're wasting your time, then sometimes that soaks into the psyche and it becomes believable for many students. But deep inside themselves, if they still have that determination and that desire, and they hear the right information, because it's the information that we go to school for. It's the information that we try, that improves the quality of our lives. And sometimes hearing the right information and following up on that, that's what that breaks that cycle, or at least give you a different perspective of how to work your way through these situations. And that's one of the things that's so important, because I had to do that myself. So I understand what that means to a student, especially coming from those environments when all you see, all you experience, all you feel is negativity. When you finally hear that positive thing that aligns with what's inside of you and your own goals and desires, then it opens a whole new set of ideas and a whole new way of thought.
And that is so important. And to me, I look at it like love. And sometimes we don't get enough love and positivity growing up. And if you think about a flower growing, if it doesn't get that sunlight and that love, it's not going to grow up right. It's not going to, it's going to be hurting and needing of nutrients. And so sometimes
Absolutely.
School can provide that motivation and that love and that help, and it should. And that's so fascinating that at the bottom of it, positivity and empowering someone is really what we need, what so many people need, even people who don't come from rough backgrounds. They might be financially set, but they might have a narcissistic parent who doesn't provide love, and they don't believe in themselves.
Absolutely. And it's like you say, using the flower or the plant analogy, some people get fertilizer and some people get Roundup, I mean, it sounds weird, but it's true. And so when we talk about, I think everybody has this idea of success that they want. They have this idea of success. And when you don't come from, or there's no examples of that in your household, mama or my mom, my dad, my grandparents, no aunts or uncles that have achieved a level of success, then what happens is when you attempt to do that, or when some of these students attempt that and they fail or they get set back, they don't realize that's part of success. So it's easy to quit. It's easy to stop because you failed the test. It's easy to stop because you failed the class. It's easy to stop because you don't have what you feel is enough resources to keep you moving forward. So it's easier to quit because I've never seen anyone overcome it to be successful, in order to be successful or achieve a degree of success that gives them the quality of life that I'm looking for. So one of the things I want students to get from this is that success is not a straight line. You don't just go from elementary school to middle school to high school to college to get a job, to buy a house, to do this, to do that. That's a straight line, but it's a series of setbacks. It's a series of adversities. It's a series of overcoming your environment. And that's a very powerful thing. So I think when they see the examples and they work through the exercises that we have, then they say, oh, now I understand better. I can see that. So now a success, or rather a setback, is merely what it is. I can identify it for what it is and know that I can work around it and move forward. That builds confidence, that builds strength, and that builds a totally different level of resilience that maybe they didn't have before.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's really important. And it's an important point. I tell my students sometimes, especially if they failed my class or got a D in my class, I tell them, I got a couple of Ds. Yeah. I failed a couple of classes, but I got that degree. Yes. I kept going. And it's like I didn't let it beat me. I knew that end goal was the degree. And
yes, the end goal. The end goal. They have to know the end goal. That's the most important thing, is the end goal.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it helps to tell them that, because they don't even think, they think that maybe my road was easy, or maybe, like my path was easy, and it helps to hear that. I would like to hear, if you don't mind, you don't have to tell as much as you don't want to tell, but a little bit about your story. So if you could tell me, like your background and what brought you here.
I came from, as I said before, I came out of a corporate background, but growing up, I came out of the single parent household. I know what it was like not to have what you needed. Now, at some point, we weren't necessarily aware that we didn't have everything we needed. But as you grow up and you realize, hey, there's something not quite right about this, or we can't afford shoes, or we don't have food, or we're getting public assistance, or these kinds of things. And you realize everyone in the family or in the household is like that. So there has to be something inside of you. And I always say this to all the groups, there has to be something inside of yourself that's bigger than the obstacles around you that would keep you or limit you from achieving what it is that your heart desires. There has to be that motivation inside of you. You may not know exactly what it is. You may not know exactly what it looks like, but there has to be something that pushes you, that drives you, that motivates you on a day-to-day basis. And growing up in Atlanta, Atlanta, Georgia, that was something that was always inside of me. And I think it was in my siblings as well. We had to push ourselves, because when you really look at it and you look ahead and you look back and you realize there's no back to going to, the only thing you can do is move forward. So you grab at everything and everyone that can help you. You have to be open to new information. One of the things and I'm glad you brought this up, because one of the things that I always stress in the workshop is building relationships. And sometimes when you come from an area or an environment where it's a sign of weakness to ask for help, then it's difficult for you to ask for help, because you're sitting in a classroom, you're failing, this person may have what you want, or the answers, or this instructor, or this teacher, or a resource on campus, but you don't ask anyone. I say you rather drive the car over the bridge and let it crash than ask for help. And what has to happen is you have to learn how to ask for help. You have to learn how to take advantage of resources that are around you. There's an acronym I use, Trish. It's called POOR, P-O-O-R. And many times people think poor is just not having any money. Okay, I don't have any money, so I'm poor. But poor, to me, is passing over opportunities repeatedly. And if there are opportunities to improve the quality of your life, but you fail to take advantage of those opportunities, that over time makes you poor. Hey, I've got this session you can go to. It'll change your life. It will really change your life. You're going somewhere and you are a special person. You need to go to this. You need to hear this. Okay, I'm going. Well, what happened? You didn't show up, guy. What happened? Well, I had to work. Or, well, I had to pick the kids up because the babysitter was going to charge me $15 an hour. Or, when's the next one? I'll be at the next one. And so we constantly pass over those things that could truly help us or open doors for us. So doing that repeatedly, time and time again, makes us poor, because it keeps us in the same cycle. And then years later, we want to break free. But we realize if we did an accounting of all of the things that we've missed, or all of the choices or decisions that we make not to take advantage of opportunities, not to take advantage of resources, not to build relationships with people who could really help move us and guide us in the right direction, that's what made us poor and kept us in that cycle. So I refused to live in that cycle, but to move ahead, use my mind, use my talent, use my gift to move myself ahead and become successful.
I'm glad that you pointed that out, because I don't understand a lot of times why students don't come see me during office hours or don't ask me until the end of semester. I'd love to mentor more of them. And I think a lot of faculty members feel that way.
Sure.
A lot of people on campus want to help, but they need to be asked early on in the semester.
Right. Not 2 days before final.
Right.
Well,
And
I'm sorry. I think, Trish, to be honest, I do believe there's an intimidation factor sometimes. When I look at you and I listen to you and I hear how well you speak, or you may dress a certain way, and you combine that with your knowledge, your insight, the way you carry yourself, combine it with the surroundings, the environment, the building that we're privileged to be in, then there's some students that find that very intimidating. I'm reminded of a young lady who I wrote about, and I interviewed for Journeys magazine, and she had been incarcerated for 10 years. And she told me the story. I told me her story, and I said, well, how did you feel when you first came to school? She said, I was scared to death. I was scared. I thought people were going to harm me. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to ask questions. I just wanted to keep quiet and move along. And so what does that say about environments that people come from? They would rather drive the car over the bridge and crash than ask for help, because I don't know how to ask for help. And if I ask you and I don't ask the right way, that makes me feel even more like I'm not qualified. I don't belong here, you see. And so then I put a self-fulfilling prophecy in place that when I do fail, that voice comes back and says, see there, you never should have been there to begin with. So what we want to do is change that paradigm through the journey. So that's what it is. It's a journey. It's from where you came from to where you want to go and how to get there. You're going to hear those voices, and they are normal. We're going to show you that they don't have the power over you that you think they do. You're stronger than that. So it requires them to pull from the inside of themselves, that part of themselves that's bigger than those obstacles. That's the part we want to work on. And so she attended the workshop 3 times. Yeah, 3 times she did. And now she's finished her first year at Texas Wesleyan. She's finished her first year at Texas Wesleyan. And here is a person that, if you look at the statistics, she was a write-off. That's why I believe that there are lots of people that get written off and fall through the cracks that shouldn't, that have a lot of potential. They just need the right information, and they need the right support.
I totally agree. And I think it's wonderful that you've created this. And I've been amazed as an instructor how just a few kind words has made a difference in someone's life. You know, just pointing out a talent, and then they believe it, that we don't hear enough about our talents, enough about our goodness. And, you know, if you spend time doing that for people, then they start taking themselves more seriously. And it's that alone makes a difference. So this journey that students go on is really kind of profound. And I'd like you to take me through it a little bit. Like, say I'm a student who has had lots of setbacks in life, you know, just lots of disappointments, and I almost don't have the motivation to even try again. I just feel like, what's the point?
Right. Okay. You come to the workshop, and the first thing we do is we have a video that really just hits the person from different perspectives. And when I say that, you can find those motivational videos on YouTube or whatever, but you'll be surprised at how many of our students never even look at those, because they're geared to looking at other things, other types of content. But when you're focused on taking yourself and moving yourself in a certain direction, you have to feed yourself with information and content that helps you to get where you're going and change your mindset and change your thinking. In the workshop, we also use a lot of interactive examples. Here's an example. For instance, we have an exercise that asks you the question: if you were going from Dallas, Fort Worth to New York City, how would you get there? So we give them a map, okay, a map. Now, in that map, you're journeying from Dallas, Fort Worth to New York City. How do you get there? So we don't tell them which direction or whatever, but we ask them to connect the cities they would go through. You would be surprised at how many students say, if I'm going there, I'm going down Houston first, and then I'm going to New Orleans and have some gumbo. Then I'm going to Atlanta. Then I'm going to go up through Kentucky. Then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to take the long way. Then there are some that take the direct way. So when we debrief, what we find is that there are many different ways to get to New York City. Some people take the long way, which means they may have gotten out of school, started a job, had a family, and then they came back 10 years later. Then there are some that went directly out of school, out of high school, and got there faster, but they both got there. Some people use GPS. Yeah, so there are people that have access and resources that other people don't. So they understand that. One of the things also is the map that we give them is not very clear, but neither is life. Life is not very clear. So when we do the debrief and they see all of these things, because this is an exercise they work together on, they find that everything's not fair. Some people start early, some people start late. Some people have resources, others do not. Some people take the long route, some people take the short route. Some people have faster cars, some people have slower cars. All in all, that's just life. If it takes you longer to get there, but you get there, what did you learn in the process? We want success. Success is the end game. Success is the end result. But it's the process of going through that we learn from. We don't benefit by getting on the airplane and getting there in 2 hours and looking at your person who drove and say, hey, nah, I got here. Now you figure it out yourself. But what did you learn in the process of getting there? What did you learn with the setbacks or through the setbacks? What did you learn from the adversity? How did that make you a stronger person? How does that equip you for what you're going to do? And how does that equip you for helping someone else transition to where they want to go? So we challenge the attendees from a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, I see that. And one thing that you said that really stuck with me was the content that they're watching. You know, students are going often for content that makes them laugh or entertains them, and they're not using the internet in the same way that maybe people of our generation are, you know, which is like, you know, thinking and podcast and motivation and, you know, all types of different information. But I do want to give them clues. You know, I want to give them hints about all that we know about healing and motivation and transformation. And it really sounds like you're doing that in a variety of ways. And what are some of the top ways that you think students are what are they really missing, you know, from just going to the internet for fun?
I think when you say what are students missing, I think I take a global or holistic perspective of that, and I believe that they're missing empowerment. If you look at what's taught in school, you know, we teach reading, writing, we teach math, we teach we teach history, we teach sociology, but what about empowerment? How do I empower myself? How do I motivate myself? How do I develop a can-do attitude? Which is what may push me to combine all of these good things that I'm learning on campus. All of these things that I'm learning now become the ingredients of the cake that I know I need to bake. But the empowerment portion is, how do I sell the value of what I have? You say, how do I build that confidence and self-confidence? And one of the tools that is very important to the workshop, because the workshop is extremely powerful. And as you've gone to the workshop, gone to the website, you can pull some of those student comments. But this guide here, this is a guidebook. And in the guidebook actually helps them to solidify what they've learned in the workshop. And I know I'll just back up a little bit so you can see this. It actually helps them to sustain what they've learned, because a lot of articles, exercises, ways to put together their own goals. And goals are extremely important, because maybe, like you said, you're that person who comes to the workshop, I don't have any goals. I don't have any talents. I don't have any gifts. I'm only coming because I was made to come. I don't really want to come to this anyway, but I was made to come. And I love those kinds of students because you see them and they're sitting there like this. It's like I'm waiting to have a wisdom tooth pulled. So they're sitting there like this. And then you notice they're like this. Then you notice they're like this. And then you notice they're like this. But now that we've stirred up all of this stuff and I'm really pumped and I'm going home and my mind is just whirling, how do I sustain it? And that's what the guidebook helps them to do, is sustain that. Because the important thing about working with the guidebook is it requires an accountability partner. And it can't be your peer. It has to be someone that you respect, that you can work with, that can keep you on the path of accountability until you put together your own action plan. And that's what it does. At the end, you put together your own action plan. It requires you to put together an action plan. Plus, there's a bibliography in here. There's all kinds of content that you need to help you sustain what you've started through the workshop. And so I think that's pretty powerful.
Oh, and I have so many questions. One question that I didn't think I was going to ask first, but I think I will, is what do you say to students who, no matter what it is, they've faced something unfair in life, whether it's bullying, whether it's abuse, racism, whether it's, cyberbullying is a big deal today.
Yeah.
And so students come out and they want to talk about themselves and talk about, their process, and they might get made fun of. What do you tell students about moving forward towards success in the face of pushback?
We all have some kind of challenge that we deal with. I mean, that's true for me, for you, for adults, for adolescents, for tweens. We all have some challenge that we deal with. It's always, and I call that an adversity. We all have an adversity. But it's how we choose to handle that. What is the process we use? Who are the resources and what are the resources that we have? That's why it's very important to surround yourself. I asked one of the questions, how many people in here have a luxury car? And you'd be surprised, a lot of people raise their hands. What kind of car do you have? Well, I have a BMW. What kind of fuel do you put in it? I have to use premium. What happens if you put regular in it? Then it's going to damage the engine. It's going to start to knock. It's going to cause mechanical problems. The truth behind that is that there are numbers of students and people in general that are premium people, but using regular fuel. We don't feed ourselves with the right content every day. And it's hard. It's easier to sit and binge watch on some program that's not going to do or benefit us in any kind of way. It's easy to do that because it's mindless. But it's more challenging to go and choose material, as you said, on YouTube or LinkedIn. It's more challenging to choose that type of content to feed ourselves in a different way. Why? Because sometimes there's a fear factor involved. What if I do all this and it doesn't work? What if I do all this and it doesn't work? Now I'm even further behind and I feel even worse about myself. Or what if I do all of this and nothing happens? I mean, so there's a lot of different things that go. There's the what if. There's the I'm scared and I won't tell you. I'm scared and I don't want you to know. I'm scared simply because I saw somebody else do that I thought was smarter and sharper than me, and it didn't work for them. So why would it work for me? So there's a lot of different things that are tied up into it. But to overcome that, one must take the first step. It's like in any journey, one must take the first step. You have to take step number 1, then step number 2, then step number 3. And it's an ongoing process. There we go again. It's all in the process. And then as you start feeding yourself with higher octane information, then you start to see a different perspective. It's just like working out. People say, oh, I want to change my body. I want to work out. I want to work out. What time do you go? I say, I go at 5. Oh, no, I can't go then. Well, what about after work? Oh, when I get off work, I can't do it. You see, but once you decide I'm getting up at 5 o'clock and I do it Monday and I do it Tuesday and I do it Wednesday and I do it for 2 weeks and I do it for 3 weeks and it's raining outside or it's cold outside, but I still get up and I go and I go and I go, then it becomes a habit. Then I don't eat the same way. Then I don't do some of the same things and I take better care of myself. And so now I'm on a path to change or transform something that I always wanted to transform in my life. And it's the same thing with life.
Oh, I love
myself differently to transform my life.
I love that. And there's, again, I have so many thoughts, but I'm going to come to that idea of fear holding people back from achieving a goal, because it's scary to go, you know what, here's where I am, here's where I imagine my life being and what I want it to be, and I'm going to keep going toward that imagined reality. And no matter what, no matter how many no's, no matter how many walls I hit, I'm going to keep going. Like, you know, the recent thing that I did that with in my life, and I've shared with students, is it was not an easy journey to get published. I probably queried every agent, literary agent out there twice. You know, like I got so many no's. Like, I mean, I even got mean no's. Like people took the time to go, "Oh my God, I'm so not interested in this." You know, I mean, like that's pretty harsh. But then I found an agent who liked me and a publisher who liked me, and that's all you have to do is find that place where you're liked and wanted, and you keep going and you keep doing it. And even if it had not turned out the way it had turned out, even if I self-published and did something else, you know, I still would have kept going, because like once you get it in your mind that this is happening, there is nothing on the planet that's going to stop you. I mean, you're just going. And it's hard to teach that, but I think it's part of imagination too, you know, and faith. I think it takes a lot of imagination and faith and sticking the course.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I remember being at a friend's house years ago, and Les Brown used to have a show on PBS. And he said something that was very profound. He said, you have to get tired of being tired. He said, and in his words, he said, you got to be hungry. And when he said you have to be tired of being tired, how many times do people say, I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of this job. I'm so tired of this lifestyle. I'm so tired of this person I'm with. I'm tired. I'm just tired of being tired. That's when there has to be some change. But Tony Robbins also said that fear, he considered false evidence appearing real. And every time, you know what, you have this voice in your head, yeah, you go out there, you do that and see what happens. You know, every time you tried that before, it never worked. So what makes you think it's going to work this time? And then what happens is you go out there and you take that step and boom, you get shut down. Just like you say, you get shut down. You try it again, you get shut down. And now you're fearful to come out. You're like the turtle that's in a shell that every time he comes out, boom, he gets popped upside the head. You're going to be conditioned not to come out. And so that's what happens. And people create their self-imposed prison. And they're behind those bars and they refuse to come out. That's when, over time, they see someone else wanting to do the same thing. And that's when they say, that's not going to work. I've tried that before. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You're wasting your time with that. They become angry and bitter because they failed. Because they failed and stayed there. Not failed and got back up, but they stayed. They failed and stayed there. And we try to provide tools to show you how you can overcome those things, even though that false evidence still appears to be real.
And you know what just hit me, and what I think is kind of interesting about YouTube and this platform and putting things out into the world, is there might be a student someday who's listening to this video. That's and true. You know, they took the time to listen to this and they thought, wow, okay, I do need to change my life. And if you were encountering a student who, Was just hurting so deeply and they didn't have much faith in themselves. What would you say, like there are some students who are in such a deep place of depression
Yes,
that they honestly don't even know if they have the ability
right,
to put the next foot in front of the next foot, to
right.
go forward. What would you tell someone who's in a really dire place like that?
That's a good question. It's a really good question because everyone would respond differently. Depending on the individual, they will respond differently. I always realize that your audience, 100% of your audience, if they come to the workshop, what's going to happen is 20 to 30% might hit right away. It might just blow them away. And they're like, oh my gosh, this was just great. I'm so excited. I'm going to start making some changes. Then you'll have another 20% that might say, that was pretty good. I like that. I've heard it before, but I like it. And then certain things will hit them when at the traffic light. They're sitting at the traffic light, and that's when they'll laugh at the joke that you told 2 hours ago. Oh, now I get it. That was funny. Then you have a certain percentage that, yeah, it was okay. I think it was good information. And it works on them a little bit later, maybe. And then you have a certain percentage that says, you know what, it all sounded good and everything, but that just won't work for me. It just won't work. And so I'm not really interested in that. And they keep or continue to do the same things. And they have to have that brick wall. They have to have that tired of being tired experience before something actually clicks. Because believe me, I always know that by the time they get to my workshop, this is not the first time they've heard this content. In most cases, they've heard bits and pieces, or they've heard it in many ways or a different perspective before they got to me. It's just a matter of timing, that right time and the right information at the right day, pow, now the light clicks on. So in answer to that question, it depends on where that person is in their life as to whether they're willing and ready to make that change. They can choose after you give them some information, or they go somewhere and you point them in the right direction. They go like, oh my God, guess what, Mr. Mons, this was just incredible stuff. I feel so good about this now. I'm ready to take that next step. Or they can continue the same way for a longer period of time before they finally get it, if they get it.
Yeah, so sometimes you're planting seeds in
Sometimes
some
you're planting
minds.
seeds. You're right. Like you said, they have to be fertilized. No Roundup, just fertilize.
Yeah. And sometimes those seeds sprout later and you don't hear from them, but maybe
That's
they're,
right.
it's a series of events that help that seed grow into something many years later. It's
But what's
always,
interesting is when you do hear from them. And it may
yes.
be a year, it may be 2 years down the road, and you hear this, Mr. LeMons, the first thing they say is, you may not remember me, but I remember them. I'm not so great with names all the time, but I can remember a face no matter what. And when they tell me, I went to your workshop, or you came to my class, or da 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 da, and this is what happened to me, and now I'm doing this. That just makes your day. That just makes your day to hear that.
And, I have this belief, and I'm sure you do too, that the majority of people in this world are really good at their heart level. They just
Right.
want a better life. They want, a great life for their family. They want to enjoy time with their kids. For the most part, people are just at their core good. And it's so amazing to see lives transform. And we don't get enough good news. And so I think one
Absolutely.
of the cool things about talking with you and other, administrators and faculty members and people across the country is spreading the good news. So,
Yes.
you told me one story about the woman who's at Texas Wesleyan now
Uh-huh.
after being in jail. Tell me another inspiring story that, you've
Oh,
sat back and you're just like, whoa, I can't believe this student changed this
yes.
much.
It is really interesting because I also wanted to start a magazine based on the workshops of stories from individuals who've gone through the workshop and, you know, have success stories to share. And another individual, he attended TCC, and I just happen to have a copy of, I'll move this back, Journeys magazine. And in the magazine, this magazine it's a compilation of stories, success stories, articles, inspiring content. And so what's interesting about it, there's this gentleman here that attended the workshop. His name is Ira Thomas. He was a student here. You can see old Ira there. And what's interesting is he had a similar experience as the young lady who had gone to been incarcerated 10 years, but he had not been incarcerated. He came from a single parent household. His mom was a truck driver, so he had to take care of his siblings. So in doing that, he got in some trouble. One of the things he said, and I quote, "At the age of 15, there is nothing more humiliating and terrifying than looking down the barrel of a police officer's gun," end quote. And so he shared his story. He came to TCC, and he was like so many other first-time in college students. He couldn't find his direction. He had problems. He didn't know how to ask for help, but he found himself in a mentor organization. He got in a mentor organization, and that opened up an entirely different world with different people to where he felt comfortable asking for help. He felt comfortable taking advantage of resources. And in the process, he ended up graduating from TCC, and he went on to TCU. Now, there were like 7 students at that time that went on to TCU with him. Of the 7, only 2 graduated, and he happened to be one of them. And here is a picture of him with his degree from TCU. And his degree is, he had a Bachelor of Science in, let's see, I can't see exactly what it is in here, but he had a really specific degree, very challenging degree. And I say that to say, he was one of these people that, again, were considered a write-off. But he has graduated from TCU, Texas Christian University. And he was one that had a child. And his daughter, as a matter of fact, I'll do this right quick, but on his graduation day, his daughter was there. And I don't think it was in this particular one, but his daughter attended his graduation. His daughter was about 4 years old. Aww. And so I say that to say, these students, if you look at demographics, if you look at numbers, if you look at, if you put them in a category of, these students are going to be successful, and based on the demographics, based on statistics, based on this, these students will not be successful. A lot of times, the information they're exposed to, the resources they're exposed to, the mentors they're exposed to, the support system they're exposed to, turns that on its head. And then you have a graduate. And that is a very empowering thing.
Oh, thank you for that story. And I have those stories too of students, and we're so blessed. We're so blessed to be at TCC and to be at Trinity River campus. And for those who are watching and don't know our campus, I do want to say it's the old Radio Shack headquarters, and it is gorgeous. It overlooks the Trinity River. I mean, I think it's one of the prettiest community college campuses probably in the nation. We might have a few in California that give us a run for our money, but it's truly gorgeous. And what I've noticed at all my places in education, when administration and when faculty members and when staff, when everyone is on board and they're willing to do whatever it takes, money-wise, time-wise, energy-wise, to change lives, guess what they do? And it's just that simple. And I've seen it time and time again in the worst, like the poorest school districts in Texas. I've worked in some of them, and I've seen grant writers bring in technology. We've stayed after school working with students and switched around a dropout rate at the high school level from 60% stay in school to I had one student drop out of my class, my senior class. Like
Wow.
that was it.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I mean, we hung on to them all. And that
Yes.
is such a good feeling, to make a
Yes.
difference in people's lives. And it's often love and that focus. And if
Yes.
there's anything that you would want to say to different organizations and schools that
Sure.
might have you speak, or other, just give advice to
Yeah.
other faculty members, then I'd love for you to jump in.
Well, I love to say that if you don't have a passion for changing lives and wanting to see that happen so desperately in your own life, then you're in the wrong profession. The thing about it is that I came out of a corporate background and I was paid a lot of money to do what I did. I was really blessed, very fortunate. So when my life changed, it spiraled down. I mean, when you get released from that kind of job that pays you almost $200,000 a year, there's some changes that are going to take place. And I was unemployed for almost 2 years. So when I had the opportunity to come to education, the first thing that came to my mind is, what am I going to tell these kids? How am I going to benefit them? And I realized that all of the things that I've done in my life, everything, all my travels throughout Europe, throughout Northern Africa, all of the travels that I've had, everything that I've done and the accomplishments I had prepared me for this one opportunity. And I came out of a position or out of a field to where you were only as good as your last month. You were only as good as your last project. So I had to continue to build projects that reached students, that contributed to some form of student success. And that included building and helping my staff to become better so that they could offer more to students and assist other faculty and staff members. So it's this thing to where you have to embrace the environment to where you are right now. And I realize there are a lot of instructors and teachers and faculty members that struggle every day with the group of students that they have. But on those days when you feel your absolute worst, that's when that safety valve comes, and that's when you get that knock on the door and that small victory that lets you know that what you do is important. It's more than important, because you do touch the future. You do change lives. And it's not just that student's lives, but it's the life of their family. And that may be the only student in that family that ever moves past high school, that ever moves past an associate's degree, that ever moves past a bachelor's degree and makes a difference in the lives of someone else. And they can attribute it somewhere along the line to, oh, I remember Miss Grayson. She was amazing. I remember Mr. Harper. That guy was something else. And we make those impressions that are lifetime. And you may never know it, but that's what you do. And that's what I admire in the people here on this campus who do what they do as well. So thank you for doing what you do, Trish.
Thank you. And I love it that we're able to focus on the good news.
Absolutely.
This is what I want this YouTube channel to be, is motivational and focus on the
Yes.
good stories, the success that is happening. I look back and I can't go into the details of some stories, but I can say that some students were court mandated to come to community college.
Right.
And because of gang stuff, and then they become a history teacher. That just blows my mind. That the movement from this place in life to this place in life, or someone who was not an academic at all gets a 4.0 here, gets a 4.0 at UNT, and gets a great job. Against all odds. Looking at his or her background, you would think no way. And it just blows my mind that this happens. And it's what we do, it's what we provide for students. And so when I look at the bad news in society, I always come back to, but wait, I think education is this place of great hope and great inspiration, and it needs to stay that way.
Yeah, and one thing also, Trish, is that regardless of what you do out there as an instructor or whatever, you cannot forget why you got into it in the first place. You can't forget it. You have to keep that passion, whatever you have to do to keep that passion, to continue that work, that journey. That's what you have to do. And speaking of journey, I would love to present the journey at your institution because it is very, very much needed. Our students have truly benefited from it. And we constantly are working to expand the program and get more involvement from different groups and different departments and organizations. So we'd love the opportunity to come to your organization or talk to you about hosting us for the Journey Workshop. And you can find out more information. Can I share this
Oh,
with
yeah, yeah, please, please.
Find out more information about the workshop at www.thejourneyoflife.me. www.thejourneyoflife.me. All lower cases. And I tell you what, you will get as much information as you would like on it. There's video, there's a gallery with lots of pictures, there's student surveys, there's a lot of information, and my contact information. My email is info@thejourneyoflife.me. So I look to hear from as many of you as you think you want me to come and have a conversation or present the journey. Would love to.
And my hope for this channel is to interview people from around the country. So hopefully people from around the country will see you, because you'll be my first video on this new YouTube channel. And I'll put all your information below in the show notes on YouTube. Yes. And if it gets updated, you can always send that to me. Yes. But I like to connect people. That's one of my gifts, I think, is creating community and connecting people. And so it has been such a pleasure to have you on here. It's just a wealth of information. And
thank you.
I admire the work that you do, Stephen.
Well, thank you. It's really interesting because remember 10 years ago when the campus was new, I was videoing and interviewing you, and now 10 years later, you're videoing and interviewing me.
Right,
so
right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We need to dig that video up and get in. All right. Well, thank you much. And everyone, please check out the show.